The static crackled through the underground bunker like electricity through water. Major Kestrel Thorne sat hunched over her flight helmet, a screwdriver balanced between her teeth as she worked the tiny Phillips head into the mic assembly. The fluorescent lights above cast harsh shadows across her weathered hands, each scar telling a story the Pentagon preferred to keep classified. Still playing with toys, whisper. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Kane, his black ops insignia catching the light as he leaned against the concrete wall. His team of operators stood behind him, their faces hidden behind tactical masks, but their posture screamed skepticism. Kestrel didn't look up. She'd heard worse than whisper, the call sign that had followed her through 3 deployments, earned not for stealth, but for the way her voice supposedly disappeared when the pressure mounted. The brass had never understood that silence wasn't weakness. Sometimes it was the only thing standing between a mission and catastrophe. 15 minutes to wheels up, Kane continued, checking his watch. Hope you can get that antique working. We're not carrying dead weight on this op. The screwdriver slipped, drawing a thin line of blood across her knuckle. Kestrel finally raised her eyes, meeting Kane's gaze with the kind of steady calm that had kept her alive through 17 combat missions. It's not the equipment that's the problem. Something flickered across Kane's face, curiosity, maybe, or recognition. Around them, the pre-flight chaos of Operation Nightfall continued. Technicians scurried between aircraft, their voices creating a symphony of controlled urgency. The smell of aviation fuel mixed with the metallic tang of weapons being loaded, creating an atmosphere that would have been overwhelming to civilians, but felt like home to Kestrel. The mission briefing had been sparse. Deep infiltration behind enemy lines. Radio silence maintained until extraction. 1 pilot, 1 aircraft, 6 operators who'd made it clear they viewed her as little more than a taxi service. What they didn't know was that Kestrel Thorne had been flying combat missions since before some of them had finished basic training. Her fingers found the loose connection in the mic assembly, a simple fix that had been eluding her for the past 10 minutes. Not because it was difficult, but because her mind had been elsewhere, replaying the coordinates they'd been given. Something about the numbers felt familiar, like an echo from a mission she'd tried to forget. As the connection clicked into place, the helmet's communication system hummed to life. Clear, crisp, ready. Kestrel pulled the screwdriver from between her teeth and stood, her movements deliberate and precise. "Equipment check complete," she announced, her voice carrying across the bunker with quiet authority. Kane's team shifted slightly, their body language suggesting they'd registered something different in her tone, something that made them pause. But it was Kane himself who truly surprised her. Without a word, he reached up and removed his own helmet, setting it aside with deliberate care. His dark eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that spoke of hard-won experience. "Tell me about those coordinates," he said quietly. The static fell silent, and in that silence everything changed. Kestrel's mind raced back 18 months to a mission that officially never happened. The coordinates weren't just familiar, they were burned into her memory like a brand. Grid reference 41, 2,458 degrees N, 36, 1,428 degrees E, the mountains of northern Turkey, where her previous co-pilot had died in her arms, while enemy fire turned their extraction zone into a killing field. "You've been there before," Kane said. It wasn't a question. The bunker seemed to contract around them. Technicians continued their work, but their movements felt distant, muffled. Kestrel's hand instinctively moved to the small silver pendant at her throat, a gift from Captain Alina Vasquez, her former weapons systems officer, given just hours before that final mission. "Operation Shadowmere," Kestrel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "February 2023, extraction went sideways." Kane's expression shifted. The skepticism that had defined his posture moments before evaporated, replaced by something approaching respect. "You were the pilot who held position under fire for 47 minutes. gave covering fire from a disabled aircraft while your crew chief organized ground defense. You read the after-action report. I wrote the recommendation for your Silver Star. Kane's admission hung in the air like smoke. Command buried it, said the mission was too classified for public recognition. The revelation hit Kestrel like a physical blow. She'd spent over a year believing her actions that day had been deemed insufficient, that Alina's death had been meaningless in the eyes of the military bureaucracy. The nightmares had been relentless, not just the memory of Alina's final words, but the crushing weight of perceived failure. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. Kane glanced at his team, then back at her. "Because I needed to see if you still had it, if that day broke you or forged you into something stronger." Around them, the pre-flight preparations continued with mechanical precision, but the atmosphere had shifted. Kane's operators were watching their leader with new attention, recognizing the change in his demeanor. The woman they dismissed as a mere transport pilot was being treated with the kind of deference usually reserved for combat veterans. "The coordinates," Kane continued, "they're not exact, but they're close. 3 kilometers southeast of where Shadowmere went down." Kestrel felt her pulse quicken. The mountains in that region were a maze of caves and hidden valleys, perfect for concealing high-value targets. But they were also perfect for concealing the kind of anti-aircraft batteries that had turned her previous mission into a nightmare. "What's the target?" she asked. Kane's jaw tightened. "The man who ordered the ambush that killed your crew." The words struck her like lightning. For 18 months she'd carried the weight of Alina's death, the guilt of surviving when her co-pilot hadn't. She'd replayed every decision, every maneuver, wondering if she could have done something different. Now, the possibility of justice, real, tangible justice, stood before her like a door she'd never expected to open. "His name is Colonel Dmitry Volkov," Kane continued. "GRU operative, specializes in cross-border operations. Intelligence suggests he's coordinating with insurgent groups in the region, using the same network that compromised Shadowmere." The name meant nothing to Kestrel, but the implications were staggering. The mission that had haunted her dreams hadn't been a random tragedy. It had been a calculated strike against American forces, orchestrated by a man who was still operational, still killing. "This is personal for you," Kane observed. "It's personal for all of us," Kestrel replied, her voice gaining strength. "Alina died protecting intelligence that could have saved lives. If Volkov is still active, then her sacrifice was incomplete." Kane nodded slowly. "The question is, can you put personal feelings aside and fly the mission?" It was a fair question. Kestrel had seen good pilots make fatal mistakes when their emotions overrode their training. But she'd also seen what happened when pilots flew without any emotional investment. They became mechanical, predictable, vulnerable. "I can fly it," she said, "but I need to know everything. No more surprises, no more classified details that might get your team killed." Kane's respect for her seemed to deepen. "Agreed, but first we need to discuss your aircraft." He led her across the bunker floor to where a sleek, angular aircraft sat under protective covers. Even concealed, its distinctive silhouette was unmistakable to anyone familiar with next-generation military hardware. "A-80 Wraith," Kane said, pulling back the cover to reveal the aircraft's matte black fuselage. "Stealth attack helicopter, still technically in prototype phase. Electronic warfare suite, advanced targeting systems, and enough firepower to level a small city." Kestrel had heard rumors about the Wraith program, but seeing the aircraft in person was different. Every line of its design spoke of lethality and precision. The rotor assembly was unlike anything she'd flown before, swept-back blades that seemed to bend light around them, creating an optical illusion that made depth perception difficult. "I've never flown one of these," she admitted. "But you've flown the AH-64 Apache, the AH-1Z Viper, and the experimental AH-72 Lakota variant. Kane rattled off her flight history with encyclopedic precision. The Wraith's flight characteristics are similar to the Lakota, but with enhanced maneuverability and significantly reduced radar signature. Kestrel approached the aircraft, her trained eye taking in every detail. The cockpit was designed for single-pilot operation, with advanced AI systems handling many of the functions that typically required a two-person crew. It was both impressive and slightly unsettling, a reminder of how warfare was evolving. "What's the catch?" she asked. Kane's smile was grim. "The catch is that this aircraft doesn't officially exist. If something goes wrong, if you're shot down or captured, the United States government will deny any knowledge of the mission or the hardware." "Standard Black Ops protocol," Kestrel nodded. "I've been disavowed before." This is different. The Wraith represents about $2 billion in research and development. Congress doesn't know it exists. The Secretary of Defense doesn't know it exists. If it falls into enemy hands, it could shift the balance of power in the region. The weight of responsibility settled on Kestrel's shoulders like a familiar coat. She'd carried secrets before, but never one with such far-reaching implications. The aircraft before her wasn't just a machine, it was a glimpse into the future of military aviation, and potentially the key to preventing future tragedies like Shadowmere. "I need an hour to familiarize myself with the systems," she said. "You have 30 minutes, Kane replied. "Weather window closes at 300 hours. As Kestrel began her pre-flight inspection, she could feel the weight of Kane's team's attention. They were professionals, elite operators who'd worked with the best pilots in the military. But they'd also been briefed to expect a standard transport run, not a mission with personal stakes and experimental hardware. The Wraith's interior was a symphony of advanced technology. Holographic displays showed real-time intelligence feeds, while haptic feedback systems provided tactile information about the aircraft's status. The flight controls were intuitive yet sophisticated, designed to enhance rather than replace pilot instincts. "Whisper," Kane's voice came through the comm system. "We're receiving updated intelligence. Volkov's position has shifted. He's moving to a more defensive location." Kestrel's hands moved across the control panel with practiced efficiency. "Define more defensive." "Hardened bunker complex built into the mountainside. Multiple escape routes, integrated air defense systems. He knows we're coming." The implications were clear. The mission had just shifted from a targeted strike to a potential siege. The Wraith's stealth capabilities would be crucial, but even the most advanced aircraft had limitations when faced with concentrated anti-aircraft fire. "Can we abort and wait for a better opportunity?" Kestrel asked. Kane's pause was telling. "Negative. Intelligence suggests he's preparing to relocate permanently. This is our only shot." Kestrel closed her eyes, feeling the weight of Alina's pendant against her chest. 18 months of guilt and grief had led to this moment, a chance to close the circle, to transform tragedy into purpose. But the risks were enormous, not just for her but for Kane's team and the future of American military technology. "I need to know about your operators," she said. "Their experience, their capabilities. If we're going into a hot zone, I need to understand what I'm working with." Kane's response came through the comm system with military precision. "Team leader, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. 15 years special operations, 3 tour in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. Explosive specialist and tactical coordinator." Through the cockpit glass, Kestrel could see Rodriguez checking his equipment with methodical care. His movements spoke of a professional who'd seen enough combat to know that preparation was the difference between mission success and body bags. Medic Corporal Thompson, combat medic, specialized in trauma surgery under fire, saved more lives than the Pentagon keeps count of. Thompson was younger than the others, but his hands moved with the confidence of someone who'd performed miracles under impossible conditions. The medical kit he was preparing seemed substantial enough to handle everything from gunshot wounds to complex surgical procedures. Communications specialist Sergeant Martinez speaks 4 languages, handles electronic warfare and signal intelligence. If there's a radio frequency in the area, he can find it, decode it, or jam it. Martinez was surrounded by electronic equipment that looked more like science fiction than military hardware. His screens showed real-time intercepts of enemy communications, painting a picture of defensive preparations that was both detailed and ominous. Sniper, Sergeant First Class Jackson, longest confirmed kill at 1,847 meters, provides overwatch and precision fire support. Jackson was cleaning his rifle with the kind of attention that bordered on reverence. The weapon was a work of art, a custom-built precision instrument designed to deliver death from distances that seemed impossible. Demolitions, Corporal Kim, specialist in urban warfare and structure removal, can make a building disappear or create a door where none existed. Kim was the youngest of the team, but his reputation preceded him. The carefully organized explosives in his kit could level a city block or create a surgical opening in a concrete wall, depending on the mission requirements. And finally, our intelligence analyst, Staff Sergeant Williams, knows the target area better than the locals, can read terrain like a book and predict enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. Williams was studying satellite imagery with the intensity of a scholar examining ancient texts. His ability to extract tactical information from seemingly mundane details had saved countless lives over the years. Impressive team, Kestrel said, but they're ground operators. How do they feel about depending on air support for insertion and extraction? Kane's chuckle was grim. They're not thrilled. Most of them prefer to walk into their targets, maintain full control of the approach. But the terrain makes that impossible. We're talking about sheer cliff faces, narrow mountain passes, and about 50 square kilometers of terrain that's been mined and booby-trapped. The tactical situation was becoming clearer. The Wraith wasn't just transportation, it was the key to mission success. Without precision flying and advanced electronics, Kane's team would be walking into a killing field. What about extraction? Kestrel asked. If the insertion goes sideways, what's the backup plan? Kane's pause was longer this time. There isn't one. We go in, we complete the mission, we come out. If the Wraith is compromised, we walk out through hostile territory with no support and no official acknowledgement. The stark reality of black operations had never been clearer. Success or failure, they were on their own. The mission existed in a gray area where traditional military support structures didn't apply, where politics and plausible deniability mattered more than the lives of the operators involved. I need to ask you something, Kestrel said, her voice taking on a more personal tone. Why me? You could have requested any pilot in the military. Why choose someone with personal stakes in the mission? Kane's answer came slowly, as if he was choosing each word carefully. Because personal stakes make you unpredictable. Volkov is expecting a standard military response, overwhelming force, predictable tactics, adherence to doctrine. But you're not standard military anymore. You're someone who's been broken and rebuilt, someone who understands the true cost of failure. The assessment was brutally honest. Kestrel had been changed by Alina's death, transformed from a by-the-book military pilot into something harder, more adaptable. The nightmares that had plagued her weren't just trauma, they were preparation for a moment like this. There's something else, Kane continued. Volkov has been studying American military tactics. He knows how we operate, how we think, but he's never faced a pilot who's already died once and come back. The metaphor wasn't lost on Kestrel. The woman who'd flown into those mountains 18 months ago had died with Alina. The person sitting in the Wraith's cockpit now was someone else entirely, someone forged in the fire of loss and tempered by the need for justice. 30 minutes until launch, Martinez announced over the comm system. Weather conditions are optimal, but satellite imagery shows increased activity around the target area. Kestrel's fingers moved across the Wraith's control panel, activating system after system. The aircraft came alive around her, its advanced computers integrating with her movements until the line between pilot and machine began to blur. "Whisper, this is command," a new voice crackled through the comm system. "You are authorized for immediate departure. Mission parameters remain unchanged. Bring our people home." The words carried weight beyond their simple meaning. This wasn't just about eliminating a target. It was about closing a chapter that had been left open for too long. Alina's death would finally have meaning, and the intelligence she died protecting would be vindicated. As the Wraith's engine spun up, Kestrel felt a familiar calm descend over her. The pre-mission jitters, the weight of responsibility, the fear of failure, all of it faded into the background, replaced by the crystal-clear focus that had kept her alive through countless combat missions. "All stations, this is Whisper," she announced. "Departure in T-5 minutes. Final equipment checks, then we're wheels up." The response from Kane's team was immediate and professional. 6 voices confirming readiness, reporting system status, acknowledging their role in what was about to unfold. They were no longer skeptical of their pilot. They were part of a team, unified by purpose and trust. As the bunker's massive doors began to open, revealing the star-filled sky beyond, Kestrel felt Alina's presence beside her. Not a ghost or a memory, but a reminder of why some missions transcended personal survival. Some fights were worth the risk, worth the sacrifice, worth the chance of never coming home. The Wraith lifted off with whisper-quiet efficiency, its advanced rotors cutting through the air like a scythe through wheat. Behind them, the bunker disappeared into the darkness, leaving no trace of their departure. Ahead lay the mountains of Turkey, and somewhere in those peaks, the man who'd orchestrated Alina's death. But for the first time in 18 months, Kestrel Thorn felt ready for what was coming. The Wraith flew through the night like a shadow given form, its stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible to both radar and the naked eye. At an altitude of 8,000 feet, the aircraft moved with the silence of a predator, its advanced rotors producing a sound signature that was virtually undetectable from the ground. "Whisper, this is Rodriguez," came the voice of the team leader through the comm system. "ETA to target area." Kestrel glanced at the holographic display showing their flight path. The route had been carefully plotted to avoid known radar installations and follow terrain features that would mask their approach. 47 minutes to primary insertion point," she replied. Through the cockpit's enhanced vision systems, the landscape below appeared as a detailed 3-dimensional map. The mountains rose like the backbone of some ancient beast, their peaks shrouded in mist that would provide additional concealment for their approach. "Copy that, Whisper. Team is green and ready for insertion." The professional calm in Rodriguez's voice was reassuring. These were operators who'd done this before, who understood the rhythm of combat and the importance of maintaining composure under pressure. But Kestrel could also hear the underlying tension, the knowledge that they were flying into a situation where the enemy held most of the advantages. "Martinez, what's our intelligence picture?" she asked. "Intercepts show heavy radio traffic in the target area," came the reply. "Volkov's people are definitely aware that something's coming. They're not sure what, but they're preparing for a fight." The news wasn't unexpected, but it was concerning. A prepared enemy was a dangerous enemy, especially when that enemy knew the terrain better than the attackers. The element of surprise, always crucial in special operations, was being steadily eroded. "Jackson, can you get eyes on the target area from our insertion point?" The sniper's response was measured, professional. Affirmative, Whisper. I've studied the terrain maps. There's a ridge approximately 1,200 meters from the target that provides clear lines of sight to the bunker complex. I can provide overwatch and eliminate priority targets. The tactical picture was becoming clearer. Jackson would establish a sniper position while the rest of the team assaulted the bunker complex. The Wraith would provide close air support and serve as the extraction platform. It was a solid plan, but plans rarely survived contact with the enemy. Kim, what's your assessment of the target structure? Kestrel asked. Based on satellite imagery and intelligence reports, we're looking at a reinforced concrete bunker built into the mountainside, the demolitions expert replied. Primary entrance is heavily defended, but there are ventilation shafts and a secondary exit that might be vulnerable to shaped charges. The young corporal's analysis was thorough and professional. His ability to read structural vulnerabilities from satellite photos was one of the reasons he'd been selected for the team. But Kestrel could hear the unspoken concern in his voice. Even with shaped charges, penetrating a hardened bunker was dangerous work. Williams, give me the threat assessment for the approach route. The intelligence analyst's response was immediate and detailed. Primary threat is mobile anti-aircraft systems. Intelligence suggests at least 2 SA-18 launchers, possibly more. Secondary threats include small arms fire from concealed positions and the possibility of improvised explosive devices along the withdrawal route. The SA-18 was a formidable weapon, a shoulder-fired missile system capable of bringing down aircraft at ranges up to 6,000 meters. Even with the Wraith's stealth capabilities, they would be vulnerable during the insertion and extraction phases when the aircraft would be flying low and slow. Thompson, how's your medical kit looking? The medic's voice carried the calm confidence of someone who'd seen too much combat. Fully stocked for trauma surgery, blood loss, and battlefield injuries. I've got enough supplies to keep the team functional even if we take casualties. The clinical nature of the discussion was both reassuring and sobering. These were professionals who understood that people might die tonight, and they were prepared to deal with that reality. But knowing that death was possible and accepting it were different things entirely. 30 minutes to target, Kestrel announced, beginning descent to nap of the Earth altitude. The Wraith dropped toward the mountain peaks with fluid grace, its advanced flight systems automatically adjusting to the changing terrain. At this altitude, the aircraft was below most radar coverage, but it was also more vulnerable to small arms fire and shoulder-fired missiles. As they descended, the details of the landscape became clearer. The mountains were scarred by years of conflict, roads carved into impossible angles, villages that had been abandoned and reclaimed by nature, and the occasional glint of metal that suggested military hardware. Whisper, this is Martinez. I'm picking up encrypted communications from the target area. Looks like they're coordinating defensive positions. The electronic warfare specialist's discovery confirmed their worst fears. Volkov's people weren't just aware of the incoming threat, they were actively preparing to meet it. The mission was shifting from a surgical strike to a direct assault on a prepared position. Can you jam their communications? Kestrel asked. Negative. The encryption is military-grade, probably Russian. If I start jamming, they'll know we're here and switch to backup frequencies. Better to monitor and gather intelligence. It was a sound tactical decision, but it left Kane's team flying blind into a situation where the enemy could coordinate their response. The disadvantage was significant, but not necessarily fatal, if they could maintain the element of surprise for just a few more minutes. 20 minutes to target, Kestrel announced. All stations prepare for combat operations. The response from Kane's team was immediate and professional. 6 voices confirming readiness, weapons systems being armed, final equipment checks being completed. The casual banter that had characterized the early part of the flight was gone, replaced by the focused intensity of warriors preparing for battle. Through the enhanced vision systems, Kestrel could see the target area approaching. The bunker complex was exactly as described, a fortress carved into the mountainside, its entrances concealed by carefully placed camouflage and natural terrain features. But her pilot's eye caught details that the intelligence reports had missed. "Kane, I'm seeing vehicle movement near the secondary exit. Looks like they're preparing for evacuation." The team leader's response was sharp, focused. "How long until they can complete evacuation?" Kestrel studied the movement patterns through the Wraith's targeting system. "Based on the number of vehicles and personnel, maybe 15 minutes. If Volkov escapes, we'll never get another chance like this." The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. What had been planned as a deliberate assault was becoming a race against time. The team would have to move faster, take more risks, accept casualties that might have been avoided with a more methodical approach. "All stations, this is Kane. Mission parameters are changing. We're going in fast and hard. Jackson, I need you in position and providing fire support within 5 minutes of insertion. Kim, forget the subtle approach. We're going through the front door." The team's response was immediate and professional, but Kestrel could hear the underlying tension. Combat veterans understood the difference between a planned assault and a desperate gamble. This was rapidly becoming the latter. "Whisper, take us in. Get us as close as possible to the target." Kestrel's hands moved across the control panel with practiced efficiency. The Wraith responded like a living thing, diving toward the mountain peaks with predatory grace. The aircraft's stealth systems were working perfectly, but stealth meant nothing once they opened fire. "10 minutes to target," she announced. "Weather conditions are holding, but I'm seeing increased activity around the bunker complex." Through the targeting system, she could see armed figures moving with purpose around the facility. Whatever element of surprise they'd hoped to maintain was rapidly evaporating. The enemy knew they were coming, and they were ready. "Martinez, are you picking up any communications about our approach?" The electronic warfare specialist's response was immediate and concerning. "Affirmative, Whisper. They're reporting aircraft noise from the south. They don't have a visual, but they know something's coming." The news was both expected and unwelcome. The Wraith stealth systems were remarkable, but they weren't magic. Sound traveled differently in mountain terrain, and even the quietest aircraft made noise when flying at low altitude. "Jackson, can you see the target area?" The sniper's response was calm and professional. "Negative, Whisper. I need to be on the ground and in position before I can provide effective fire support." The tactical timeline was compressing rapidly. In ideal circumstances, Jackson would have been inserted first, given time to establish his position and begin providing reconnaissance. But circumstances were far from ideal, and adaptability was more valuable than perfection. "5 minutes to insertion," Kestrel announced. "All stations prepare for immediate deployment." The response from Kane's team was immediate and focused. 6 professionals preparing to leap into the unknown, trusting their training, their equipment, and their pilot to give them the best possible chance of success. But as the Wraith approached the insertion point, Kestrel felt a familiar tightness in her chest. The same feeling she'd had 18 months ago, moments before Alina died in her arms. The sense that events were moving beyond their control, that the mission was balanced on a knife's edge between success and catastrophe. "Whisper, this is Kane. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, I want you to know that your flight record speaks for itself. Alina Vasquez would be proud." The words hit Kestrel like a physical blow. In the midst of preparing for combat, Kane had found a moment to acknowledge the weight she carried, the memory that drove her. It was a gesture of respect from a professional who understood the cost of loss. "Copy that, Kane. Let's go bring Alina home." The Wraith crested the final ridge before the target area, and suddenly the bunker complex was spread out before them like a three-dimensional map. The intelligence reports had been accurate but incomplete. The facility was larger than expected, with more defensive positions and escape routes than the satellite imagery had revealed. All stations, this is Whisper, target acquired, beginning final approach. As the aircraft descended toward the insertion point, Kestrel felt the familiar calm of combat settling over her. The fear, the uncertainty, the weight of personal loss, all of it faded into the background, replaced by the crystal-clear focus that had kept her alive through countless missions. Tonight, Elena Vasquez would finally get her justice, and Colonel Dmitry Volkov would learn that some debts could only be paid in blood. The insertion point was a narrow ledge carved into the mountainside, barely wide enough for the Wraith to hover while Kane's team deployed. The aircraft's advanced flight systems compensated for the treacherous wind patterns, but Kestrel's hands remained steady on the controls, ready to react to any sudden changes in conditions. 30 seconds to insertion, she announced. All stations prepare for immediate deployment. Through the cockpit's enhanced vision systems, she could see the bunker complex in perfect detail. Armed figures moved with purpose around the facility, their weapons trained on potential approach routes. The defensive positions were well prepared, overlapping fields of fire that would make any ground assault extremely costly. Whisper, this is Rodriguez. I can see the target area. Looks like they're expecting us. The team leader's observation was accurate but unnecessary. The tactical situation was clear. They were flying into a prepared defense, with limited time and no backup plan. Success would depend on speed, aggression, and the kind of professional competence that separated elite operators from ordinary soldiers. Jackson, I'm seeing multiple sniper positions around the bunker complex. Can you neutralize them? The sniper's response was calm and measured. Affirmative, but I need to be on the ground and in position. Give me 3 minutes after insertion, and I can start clearing their overwatch positions. 3 minutes was a lifetime in combat, but it was the best they could do. The Wraith's weapons systems could provide some fire support, but the aircraft's primary mission was transportation and extraction. Kane's team would have to rely on their training and each other. 10 seconds to insertion, Kestrel announced. All stations go hot. The response from Kane's team was immediate and professional. 6 voices confirming readiness, weapons systems being armed, final equipment checks being completed. These were warriors preparing to enter their natural element, where training and instinct would determine who lived and who died. The Wraith settled into a hover just above the narrow ledge, its advanced flight systems compensating for the challenging conditions. The aircraft's stealth systems were still functioning, but they wouldn't matter once the team began their assault. Speed and aggression would be their primary weapons. Go, go, go! Kane's voice cut through the comm system like a blade. The team deployed with the fluid efficiency of professionals who'd done this countless times before. Rodriguez first, establishing a security perimeter. Thompson and Martinez next, their medical and electronic warfare equipment secure and ready. Kim followed, his demolitions kit carefully balanced as he moved across the treacherous terrain. Jackson was last, his sniper rifle and equipment requiring extra care during the deployment. The big man moved with surprising grace, his movements economical and precise. Within seconds, all 6 operators were on the ground and moving toward their objectives. Whisper, this is Kane. Team is deployed and moving to target. Maintain overwatch and be ready for immediate extraction. Kestrel acknowledged the transmission while simultaneously monitoring the tactical situation through the Wraith sensor systems. The aircraft's advanced electronics painted a real-time picture of the battlefield, tracking both friendly and enemy movements with remarkable precision. Martinez, I'm seeing increased radio traffic from the target area. They know you're here. The electronic warfare specialist's response was immediate and focused. Copy that, Whisper. I'm picking up the same traffic. They're coordinating defensive positions and requesting reinforcements. The news was concerning but not unexpected. Volkov's people were professionals, and they understood the importance of coordinated defense. But requesting reinforcements suggested they were more concerned about the attacking force than their initial preparations had indicated. Jackson, report your position. The sniper's voice came through the comm system with the calm professionalism that characterized all his communications. Moving to Overwatch position. ETA 2 minutes. I can see multiple targets around the bunker complex, but I don't have clear shots yet. The tactical picture was developing exactly as planned, but plans rarely survived contact with the enemy. Kestrel kept the Wraith in position, ready to provide fire support or emergency extraction as the situation demanded. Kim, what's your assessment of the target structure? The demolitions expert's response was immediate and detailed. Primary entrance is heavily defended, but I can see structural weaknesses in the secondary access points. Give me 5 minutes, and I can create a breach point that will bypass their main defensive positions. 5 minutes was an eternity in combat, but it was the best tactical option available. The Wraith's weapon systems could provide covering fire, but the aircraft's primary value was mobility and extraction capability. Kane's team would have to create their own opportunities. All stations, this is Kane. We're moving to assault positions. Jackson, I need you to start clearing their overwatch positions as soon as you're in position. The team leader's voice carried the calm authority of someone who'd led men into combat before. His tactical decisions were sound, but the compressed timeline was forcing them to take risks that might prove costly. Whisper, I'm seeing movement around the secondary exit. Looks like they're preparing to evacuate the primary target. Kestrel's observation through the Wraith sensor systems confirmed their worst fears. Volkov was preparing to escape, and if he succeeded, the mission would be a failure. Alina's death would remain unavenged, and the intelligence she died protecting would be meaningless. Rodriguez, can you intercept the evacuation route? The team leader's response was immediate and focused. Negative, Whisper. We're committed to the assault on the bunker complex. If we split our forces, we'll be too weak to accomplish either objective. The tactical dilemma was clear. They had enough operators to assault the bunker or intercept the evacuation, but not both. The decision would determine whether the mission succeeded or failed, and there was no time for extended deliberation. Jackson, I need you to shift your position. Can you cover both the bunker complex and the evacuation route? The sniper's response was measured and professional. Negative, Whisper. The angles are wrong, and the range to the evacuation route is beyond my effective engagement distance. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. Every second of delay gave Volkov more time to escape, but rushing the assault would likely result in casualties that could have been avoided with a more methodical approach. Kim, how long until you can breach the secondary entrance? The demolitions expert's voice carried the focused intensity of someone preparing for precision work under extreme pressure. 3 minutes to place the charges, 30 seconds for detonation. But I need covering fire while I work. The timeline was tight, but it was their best option. The Wraith's weapon systems could provide the covering fire Kim needed, while Jackson eliminated the defensive positions that posed the greatest threat to the assault team. All stations, this is Whisper. I'm moving to provide fire support for Kim's breach operation. Jackson, start engaging targets of opportunity. The response from Kane's team was immediate and professional. 6 voices acknowledging the change in tactical plans, adapting to the fluid nature of combat operations. These were warriors who understood that flexibility was often more valuable than overwhelming firepower. The Wraith moved with predatory grace, its advanced flight systems allowing for precise maneuvering in the challenging mountain terrain. The aircraft's stealth systems were still functioning, but they would be irrelevant once the shooting started. Whisper, this is Jackson. I have eyes on multiple targets. Engaging now. The sniper's rifle spoke with the authority of precision and training. Through the Wraith sensor systems, Kestrel could see the results. Enemy positions going silent, defensive coordination breaking down, confusion spreading through the bunker complex. Good shooting, Jackson. Kim, you're clear to begin your approach. The demolitions expert moved with the fluid efficiency of someone who'd done this before. His path to the secondary entrance was covered by Jackson's overwatch and the Wraith's weapon systems, but he was still exposed to small arms fire from concealed positions. Martinez, I need you to jam their communications. We can't let them coordinate a response to Kim's breach. The electronic warfare specialist's response was immediate and focused. Copy that, Whisper. Beginning electronic warfare operations now. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The coordinated movement around the bunker complex broke down into confusion and individual reactions. Without communication, Volkov's people were reduced to fighting as individuals rather than as a coordinated force. Kim, report your status. The demolitions expert's voice carried the calm professionalism of someone working under extreme pressure. Charges placed and armed. 30 seconds to detonation. All stations take cover. The countdown began with mathematical precision. 30 seconds to change the tactical situation, to create the opening that Kane's team needed to complete their mission. But 30 seconds was also enough time for the enemy to react, to prepare countermeasures to escape. Whisper, I'm seeing increased movement around the primary exit. They're definitely preparing to evacuate. Rodriguez's observation confirmed their worst fears. Even with the communications jamming and the sniper fire, Volkov's people were adapting to the situation. The window of opportunity was closing rapidly. All stations prepare for breach. Kim, initiate on my mark. Kane's voice carried the weight of command, the responsibility for decisions that would determine whether his team lived or died. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness, each one bringing them closer to the moment when stealth would give way to violence. Mark! The explosion shattered the mountain silence like thunder. The secondary entrance to the bunker complex disappeared in a cloud of debris and smoke, replaced by a gaping hole that provided access to the facility's interior. Kim's shaped charges had done their work with surgical precision. Breach successful, Kim reported. Entry point is clear and accessible. The response from Kane's team was immediate and professional. Rodriguez and Thompson moved toward the breach point, their weapons ready for close-quarters combat. Martinez continued his electronic warfare operations, maintaining the communications blackout that was keeping the enemy disorganized. Jackson, I need you to shift fire to the primary exit. Don't let anyone escape. The sniper's response was calm and measured. Copy that, Whisper, shifting fire now. Through the Wraith sensor systems, Kestrel could see the tactical situation developing in real time. Kane's team was moving through the breach point with professional efficiency, while Jackson's precise fire was keeping the escape routes covered. But the enemy was adapting faster than expected. Small arms fire erupted from concealed positions, forcing the assault team to take cover. The advantage of surprise was gone, replaced by the brutal reality of close-quarters combat. Contact! Rodriguez's voice cut through the comm system with the sharp clarity of combat. Multiple hostiles in the main corridor. We're taking fire. The tactical situation was exactly what they'd hoped to avoid. Instead of a surgical strike, they were engaged in a firefight with an enemy that knew the terrain and had prepared defensive positions. The mission was still possible, but it would be costly. Thompson casualties. The medic's response was immediate and professional. Negative casualties at this time, but Rodriguez took a round to his body armor. He's functional but shaken. The news was concerning but not catastrophic. Modern body armor could stop most small arms fire, but the kinetic energy transfer was still significant. Rodriguez would be operating at reduced capacity, which could affect the team's effectiveness. Kim, can you provide additional breaching support? The demolitions expert's response was immediate and focused. Affirmative, whisper. I can create additional entry points, but it will take time to position the charges. Time was the one resource they couldn't afford to waste. Every second of delay gave Volkov more opportunity to escape or coordinate a more effective defense. The mission was balanced on a knife's edge between success and failure. All stations, this is Kane. We're moving deeper into the facility. Whisper, maintain overwatch and be ready for immediate extraction if this goes sideways. The team leader's voice carried the calm authority of someone who'd led men into combat before, but Kestrel could hear the underlying tension. The mission was becoming more difficult and dangerous with each passing moment. Copy that, Kane. I'm monitoring the situation and ready to provide fire support as needed. The Wraith's weapons systems were armed and ready, but the aircraft's primary value was mobility and extraction capability. Once Kane's team was inside the bunker complex, her ability to provide direct support would be limited. Martinez, what's the status of their communications? The electronic warfare specialist's response was immediate and detailed. Jamming is effective, but they're starting to adapt. I'm seeing attempts to switch to backup frequencies and hardwired communication systems. The news was concerning but not unexpected. Professional military forces always had backup communication methods, and Volkov's people were clearly well-trained and well-equipped. The advantage of electronic warfare was temporary at best. Jackson, report your position and status. The sniper's voice came through the comm system with the calm professionalism that characterized all his communications. Overwatch position established. I have good visibility of the primary exit, but the secondary routes are partially concealed by terrain features. The tactical picture was becoming clearer, but it wasn't encouraging. The enemy had multiple escape routes, and covering all of them simultaneously was beyond the capabilities of a six-man team. They would have to rely on speed and aggression to prevent Volkov's escape. All stations, this is Rodriguez. We're encountering heavy resistance in the main corridor. Request immediate fire support. The team leader's request was professional but urgent. The assault was encountering more resistance than anticipated, and the tactical situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. The mission was still possible, but it would require additional resources. Kim, can you provide additional breaching support from the interior? The demolitions expert's response was immediate and focused. Affirmative, but I need covering fire to position the charges. The corridor is covered by interlocking fields of fire. The tactical situation was exactly what they'd hoped to avoid. Instead of a quick surgical strike, they were engaged in a prolonged firefight with an enemy that held most of the advantages. The mission was still possible, but it would be costly. Whisper, this is Kane. We need you to provide direct fire support. Can you engage the defensive positions from your current location? The request was logical but problematic. The Wraith's weapons systems were designed for air-to-air combat and close air support, but the bunker complex was partially underground and protected by natural terrain features. Direct fire support would be difficult and potentially ineffective. I can provide limited fire support, but the target is partially concealed. I'll need precise coordinates and clear identification of friendly positions. The coordination required for close air support was complex and time-consuming, but it was their best option for breaking the tactical stalemate. The Wraith's advanced targeting systems could provide the precision needed to support the assault without endangering Kane's team. Martinez, I need you to provide targeting data for the Wraith's weapons systems. Can you paint the defensive positions? The electronic warfare specialist's response was immediate and professional. Affirmative, whisper. I'm uploading targeting data to your systems now. The Wraith's holographic displays updated in real time, showing the precise location of enemy defensive positions. The targeting data was remarkably detailed, painting a three-dimensional picture of the tactical situation that would allow for precision fire support. Targeting data received, beginning fire support operations. The Wraith's weapons systems engaged with the mechanical precision of advanced technology guided by human intelligence. The aircraft's missiles struck their targets with surgical accuracy, eliminating defensive positions without endangering the assault team. Good shooting, whisper. We're moving forward. Kane's voice carried the satisfaction of a professional who'd seen a difficult tactical problem solved through teamwork and precision. The assault was moving forward, but they were still racing against time to prevent Volkov's escape. Jackson, I'm seeing movement around the primary exit. Multiple vehicles. Looks like they're preparing for immediate departure. The sniper's observation confirmed their worst fears. Despite the communications jamming and the fire support, Volkov's people were preparing to evacuate. The window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Can you engage the vehicles? Jackson's response was measured and professional. Negative, whisper. The range is too great and the angles are wrong. I can engage personnel but not the vehicles themselves. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. They had succeeded in breaching the bunker complex, but they were running out of time to locate and eliminate the primary target. The mission was balanced on a knife's edge between success and failure. All stations, this is Kane. We're encountering additional resistance deeper in the facility. The target is definitely here, but he's well protected. The team leader's report was both encouraging and concerning. They had confirmed Volkov's presence, but eliminating him would require fighting through additional defensive positions. The mission was still possible, but it would be costly. Thompson casualties. The medic's response was immediate and professional. Rodriguez has a minor wound, but he's functional. Martinez took shrapnel to his arm, but it's not serious. No mission-critical injuries at this time. The news was concerning but not catastrophic. Combat wounds were inevitable in this type of operation, but the team was still functional and capable of completing the mission. The question was whether they could do so before Volkov escaped. Kim, what's your assessment of the facility's structure? The demolitions expert's response was immediate and detailed. The deeper sections are more heavily reinforced, but there are structural weaknesses that can be exploited. I can create additional access points, but it will take time. Time was the one resource they couldn't afford to waste. Every second of delay gave Volkov more opportunity to escape or coordinate a more effective defense. The mission was racing against the clock. All stations, this is Whisper. I'm detecting increased vehicle movement around the primary exit. They're definitely preparing to evacuate. Kestrel's observation through the Wraith sensor systems confirmed the tactical situation. Despite their success in breaching the bunker complex, they were running out of time to prevent the primary target's escape. Jackson, can you disable the vehicles? The sniper's response was calm and measured. Negative, whisper. The vehicles are armored and my weapon isn't designed for anti-material operations. I can engage the personnel but not the vehicles themselves. The tactical limitations were becoming clear. They had the right personnel for the mission, but the compressed timeline was forcing them to operate beyond their optimal capabilities. Success would require improvisation and risk-taking. Kim, can you provide anti-vehicle support? The demolitions expert's response was immediate and focused. Affirmative, but I need to reposition to get a clear shot at the vehicles. That means leaving the assault team without breaching support. The tactical dilemma was clear. They could support the assault on the bunker complex or prevent Volkov's escape, but not both simultaneously. The decision would determine whether the mission succeeded or failed. All stations, this is Kane. We're close to the target. I can hear his voice through the walls. Give us 2 more minutes and we can complete the mission. The team leader's report was both encouraging and urgent. They were close to achieving their objective, but 2 minutes might be too long to prevent Volkov's escape. The mission was balanced on a knife's edge between success and failure. Whisper, this is Martinez. I'm picking up encrypted communications about evacuation procedures. They're coordinating a withdrawal. The electronic warfare specialists' report confirmed their worst fears. Despite the communications jamming, Volkov's people were managing to coordinate their escape. The window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Can you jam the evacuation communications? Martinez's response was immediate and professional. I'm trying, but they're using hardwired systems and prearranged signals. Electronic warfare is less effective against non-radio communications. The limitations of their capabilities were becoming clear. They had the right tools for the mission, but the enemy's professionalism and preparation were neutralizing many of their advantages. Success would require adaptability and determination. All stations, this is Whisper. I'm going to reposition to provide direct fire support against the evacuation vehicles. Stand by for close air support. The decision was risky but necessary. The Wraith's weapon systems were designed for air-to-air combat, but they could be effective against ground targets under the right circumstances. The key was positioning and timing. Copy that, Whisper. We're still moving toward the target. Don't let them escape. Kane's voice carried the weight of command and the urgency of the situation. The mission was approaching its climax, and the next few minutes would determine whether Alina's death would be avenged or remain unavenged. The Wraith moved with predatory grace, repositioning to provide a clear line of sight to the evacuation vehicles. The aircraft's stealth systems were still functioning, but they would be irrelevant once the shooting started. All stations, this is Jackson. I have eyes on the primary target. Volkov is moving toward the evacuation vehicles. The sniper's report was both encouraging and urgent. They had visual confirmation of the primary target, but he was moving toward escape. The window of opportunity was measured in seconds rather than minutes. Can you engage? Jackson's response was measured and professional. Negative, Whisper. Too many civilians in the area, and the range is at the edge of my effective engagement distance. The tactical situation was becoming increasingly complex. Professional military operations required discrimination between combatants and non-combatants, but that discrimination was making the mission more difficult. All stations, this is Kane. We're encountering the target's personal security detail. Heavy resistance, but we're pushing forward. The team leader's report was both encouraging and concerning. They were close to achieving their objective, but the final phase of the mission would be the most dangerous. Personal security details were typically the most skilled and motivated defenders. Thompson, what's your assessment of the team's condition? The medic's response was immediate and professional. Rodriguez is functional but slowing down. Martinez's wound is bleeding more than I'd like. We can complete the mission, but extraction needs to happen soon. The news was concerning but not catastrophic. Combat wounds were inevitable in this type of operation, but the team was still functional. The question was whether they could complete the mission before their capabilities were seriously degraded. Kim, can you provide additional breaching support? The demolitions expert's response was immediate and focused. Affirmative, but I'm running low on shaped charges. I can create one more breach point, but it needs to count. The resource limitations were becoming clear. They had planned for a quick surgical strike, but the mission was becoming a prolonged engagement. Every round fired, every charge detonated, brought them closer to the point where they would be unable to continue. All stations, this is Whisper. The evacuation vehicles are moving. I'm engaging now. The decision was made. The Wraith's weapon systems engaged with the mechanical precision of advanced technology, but the results were disappointing. The vehicles were more heavily armored than anticipated, and the aircraft's air-to-air missiles were not optimized for ground targets. Minimal effect on the vehicles. They're still mobile and moving toward the exit. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. Despite their success in breaching the bunker complex and locating the primary target, they were running out of time and options. The mission was balanced on a knife's edge between success and failure. All stations, this is Kane. We have the target cornered, but he's behind a heavily reinforced door. Kim, I need you here now. The team leader's report was both encouraging and urgent. They had located Volkov, but eliminating him would require one final breach operation. The mission was approaching its climax. Kim, report your status. The demolitions expert's response was immediate and focused. Moving to Kane's position now. I have one shaped charge left, but it should be enough to breach the door. The tactical situation was clear. They had one chance to complete the mission, one opportunity to avenge Alina's death and prevent Volkov's escape. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Jackson, I need you to prevent any escape attempts. If anyone tries to leave that facility, stop them. The sniper's response was calm and measured. Copy that, Whisper. I have overwatch on all visible exit points. The pieces were falling into place. Kane's team was closing in on the primary target, while Jackson provided overwatch and the Wraith maintained readiness for immediate extraction. The mission was approaching its conclusion. All stations, this is Kim. Charges placed and armed, 30 seconds to detonation. The countdown began with mathematical precision. 30 seconds to complete the mission, to transform 18 months of guilt and grief into justice and closure. But 30 seconds was also enough time for everything to go wrong. All stations take cover, initiating breach in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. The explosion echoed through the mountains like thunder, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. In the silence that followed, Alina Vasquez would finally find peace, and Kestrel Thorne would discover whether justice was worth the price they had paid. The final breach had been successful, but the silence that followed was ominous. In combat, silence often meant death, and the lack of immediate communication from Kane's team was deeply concerning. The Wraith sensor systems showed no movement around the breach position, but that could mean anything. Kane, report your status, Kestrel transmitted, her voice carrying the controlled tension of someone who'd experienced too many missions that ended in silence. The response came after what felt like an eternity. Whisper, this is Kane, target is down. I repeat, target is down. The words struck Kestrel with the force of revelation. Colonel Dmitry Volkov, the man who had orchestrated Alina's death, was dead. The mission that had consumed her thoughts for 18 months was complete, but the professional in her knew that elimination of the target was only the beginning of extraction. Casualties? She asked, dreading the answer. Rodriguez took a round to the shoulder, but he's mobile. Kim has concussion from the blast, but functional. We need immediate extraction. The tactical situation was clear. The mission was complete, but Kane's team was wounded and vulnerable. The longer they remained in the area, the greater the risk of additional enemy forces arriving or the existing defenders reorganizing. Jackson, report your position and status. The sniper's response was immediate and professional. Overwatch position maintained. I can see additional vehicles approaching from the east. ETA approximately 10 minutes. The news was concerning but not unexpected. Military operations in hostile territory always attracted attention, and the explosions and gunfire would have been heard for miles. They had a narrow window to complete extraction before the tactical situation deteriorated beyond recovery. All stations, this is Whisper, beginning extraction procedures. Kane, get your team to the extraction point. The response from the team leader was immediate and focused. Copy that, Whisper. We're moving to extraction now. Through the Wraith sensor systems, Kestrel could see Kane's team moving through the bunker complex toward the extraction point. Their movements were slower than optimal, reflecting the wounds they'd sustained and the equipment they were carrying, but they were maintaining good tactical discipline. Martinez, what's the status of enemy communications? The electronic warfare specialist's response was immediate and detailed. Communications jamming is still effective, but I'm seeing increased activity on backup frequencies. They're starting to coordinate a response. The news was concerning but expected. Electronic warfare was a temporary advantage at best, and professional military forces always had backup communication methods. The window of opportunity for extraction was closing rapidly. Thompson, assessment of the team's medical condition. The medic's response was immediate and professional. Rodriguez needs immediate medical attention, but he's stable for now. Kim is showing signs of concussion, but he's functional. We can complete extraction, but medical support will be needed soon. The medical situation was manageable but concerning. Combat wounds had a way of deteriorating rapidly, especially under stress. The extraction needed to happen quickly and efficiently to prevent the situation from becoming critical. Kim, can you move under your own power? The demolitions expert's response was slightly slurred but determined. Affirmative, Whisper. I'm functional and mobile. The concussion was evident in his speech, but he was still capable of completing the extraction. The team's professionalism was evident in their ability to function despite their wounds, but physical limitations were becoming increasingly apparent. All stations, this is Kane. We're at the extraction point and ready for pickup. The team leader's report was both welcome and urgent. They had successfully completed the mission and reached the extraction point, but they were vulnerable and needed immediate evacuation. The Wraith's advanced flight systems would be crucial for a successful extraction. Copy that, Kane. Beginning extraction now. The Wraith descended toward the extraction point with predatory grace, its advanced flight systems compensating for the challenging mountain terrain. The aircraft's stealth systems were still functioning, but they would be irrelevant once the extraction began. Jackson, I need you to provide overwatch during extraction. If anything moves, stop it. The sniper's response was calm and measured. Copy that, Whisper. I have good visibility of the area and clear fields of fire. The extraction was the most dangerous phase of any mission. The aircraft would be vulnerable while hovering, and the team would be exposed while boarding. Everything depended on speed, coordination, and Jackson's ability to provide effective overwatch. All stations, this is Whisper. Beginning extraction sequence. Board immediately upon touchdown. The Wraith settled onto the narrow ledge with the precision of advanced technology guided by human skill. The aircraft's rotors created a downdraft that sent debris flying, but the landing was stable and secure. Kane's team boarded with the fluid efficiency of professionals who'd done this before. Rodriguez moved carefully, his wounded shoulder limiting his mobility. Kim showed signs of disorientation from his concussion, but he was functional. The rest of the team provided security and assistance as needed. Jackson, report your status. The sniper's response was immediate and focused. I can see the approaching vehicles. They're moving fast and armed. You need to extract now. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. Enemy reinforcements were approaching, and the extraction window was closing. The Wraith's advanced flight systems would be crucial for a successful escape. All stations, this is Kane. Team is aboard and secure. Jackson, you're cleared for extraction. The team leader's report was both welcome and urgent. The primary extraction was complete, but they still needed to recover Jackson before the enemy reinforcements arrived. The sniper's position was exposed and vulnerable. Jackson moved to secondary extraction point. I'm coming to get you. The sniper's response was calm and professional. Moving now, whisper. I can see the enemy vehicles, but they're still several minutes away. The Wraith lifted off with whisper-quiet efficiency, its advanced rotors cutting through the air with minimal noise signature. The aircraft's stealth systems would be crucial for avoiding detection during the final phase of extraction. All stations, this is Martinez. I'm detecting radio traffic about our extraction. They know we're leaving. The electronic warfare specialist's report was concerning but not unexpected. The enemy was adapting to the situation, and their response would be coordinated and professional. The extraction needed to be completed before they could organize an effective pursuit. Jackson, report your position. The sniper's response was immediate and focused. Secondary extraction point, ready for pickup. I can see the enemy vehicles approaching the primary site. The tactical situation was clear. They had successfully completed the mission and recovered most of the team, but the final extraction was racing against time. The enemy was closing in, and the window of opportunity was measured in minutes. Copy that, Jackson. Beginning final extraction now. The Wraith descended toward the secondary extraction point with the same precision that had characterized the entire mission. The aircraft's advanced flight systems compensated for the challenging terrain, while the stealth systems provided protection from detection. All stations, this is Whisper. Final extraction in progress. Jackson, board immediately upon touchdown. The sniper moved with the same fluid efficiency that had characterized his entire performance during the mission. His equipment was secured and ready, his movements economical and precise. Within seconds, he was aboard the Wraith and the aircraft was lifting off. All stations, this is Kane. Team is complete and secure. Mission accomplished. The words carried the weight of professional satisfaction and personal closure. The mission that had begun with Alina's death 18 months ago was finally complete. Colonel Dmitry Volkov was dead, and the intelligence she had died protecting was vindicated. Copy that, Kane. Beginning return flight to base. The Wraith turned toward home with the same stealth and precision that had characterized the entire mission. The aircraft's advanced systems showed no signs of pursuit, but the mountains of Turkey were unforgiving terrain for any aircraft, stealth or otherwise. Thompson, what's the medical status of the team? The medic's response was immediate and professional. Rodriguez needs surgery on his shoulder, but he's stable for now. Kim's concussion is mild, but he needs observation. Everyone else is functional. The medical situation was manageable but concerning. Combat wounds required professional medical attention, and the flight back to base would take several hours. The team's condition would need to be monitored carefully. Martinez, are we being pursued? The electronic warfare specialist's response was immediate and detailed. I'm detecting search and rescue communications, but no direct pursuit. They're organizing a response, but it's focused on the target area rather than pursuit. The news was welcome but not entirely surprising. Military forces were typically more concerned with securing the area of operations than pursuing fleeing attackers. The enemy's response would be focused on damage assessment and defensive preparations. Jackson, assessment of the mission. The sniper's response was measured and professional. Target eliminated, mission accomplished. Enemy response was professional but not overwhelming. We were fortunate in our timing. The tactical assessment was accurate. The mission had succeeded through a combination of professional competence, advanced technology, and good fortune. Any one of those elements missing might have resulted in failure. All stations, this is Whisper. Flight time to base is approximately 2 hours. Medical support will be standing by upon arrival. The return flight would give them time to process what had happened, to transform the immediate tactical success into long-term strategic victory. But for Kestrel, the mission's completion meant something more personal than professional advancement. "Kane, I need to ask you something," she said, switching to a private communication channel. "Go ahead, Whisper." Was this mission really about eliminating Volkov, or was it about giving me closure? Kane's response was immediate and honest. Both. Volkov was a legitimate target who needed to be eliminated, but you were the right pilot for the mission because you understood the stakes better than anyone else. The answer was both satisfying and concerning. Personal motivations could be powerful allies in combat, but they could also be dangerous distractions. The mission had succeeded, but the cost of mixing personal and professional objectives was always uncertain. "Alina would have been proud of what we accomplished tonight," Kane continued. "Her death wasn't meaningless, and her sacrifice helped save lives." The words hit Kestrel with the force of revelation. For 18 months she had carried the weight of Alina's death like a stone around her neck. The guilt, the grief, the sense of failure had defined her existence. But tonight, that burden had been transformed into purpose. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for flying us home," Kane replied. "All of us." The Wraith continued its flight through the night sky, carrying its crew towards safety and closure. The mountains of Turkey fell away behind them, taking with them the memories of a mission that had transformed tragedy into justice. For Kestrel Thorne, the woman who had earned the call sign Whisper through perceived weakness, the mission represented something far more significant than professional success. It was redemption, closure, and the beginning of a new chapter in a life that had been defined by loss. The flight back to base passed in relative silence, each member of the team processing the events of the night in their own way. The mission had been successful, but success in military operations was always measured in lives saved as well as objectives accomplished. "All stations, this is base control. You are cleared for immediate landing. Medical teams are standing by." The voice from base control was welcome and professional. The mission was approaching its conclusion, and the transition from combat operations to post-mission procedures was beginning. But for Kestrel, the real work was just beginning. As the Wraith descended toward the landing pad, she felt Alina's presence beside her one final time. Not as a ghost or a memory, but as a reminder that some sacrifices transcend individual loss and become part of something larger. The aircraft touched down with the same precision that had characterized the entire mission. The rotors spun down with mechanical efficiency, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The mission was complete, but the legacy would endure. "All stations, this is Kane. Mission complete. Well done, everyone." The words carried the weight of professional satisfaction and personal closure. The team that had flown into the mountains of Turkey as strangers had returned as brothers and sisters, bound together by shared danger and mutual dependence. As the team disembarked, Kestrel remained in the cockpit for a moment, processing the events of the night. The mission had been successful, but the real victory was personal. She had finally found peace with Alina's death, and the guilt that had defined her existence for 18 months was beginning to transform into something else. The debriefing would come later, followed by the after-action reports and the classified documentation that would ensure the mission's details remained secret. But for now, Kestrel Thorne allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Alina Vasquez had been avenged. The mission was complete, and the woman who had once been called Whisper had found her voice again. The post-mission debriefing took place in a sterile conference room that smelled of coffee and disinfectant. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the faces of the assembled personnel, creating an atmosphere that was both clinical and somehow final. Major General Patricia Hayes, the operations commanding officer, sat at the head of the table with the kind of bearing that spoke of decades in uniform. "The mission was a complete success," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd overseen countless operations. "Target eliminated, intelligence gathered, and all personnel recovered with minimal casualties." Around the table, Kane's team sat with the relaxed posture of professionals who completed a difficult job. Rodriguez's arm was in a sling, but his expression was one of satisfaction rather than pain. Kim showed no obvious signs of his concussion, though he moved with the careful deliberation of someone still recovering. "Major Thorne," General Hayes continued, turning her attention to Kestrel, "your performance during this operation was exemplary. The precision flying required for insertion and extraction in those conditions was remarkable." The praise was professional and well-deserved, but Kestrel felt a strange detachment from the words. The mission had been personal for her in ways that the official debrief could never capture. The elimination of Volkov was important, but the closure it provided was invaluable. "The Wraith performed flawlessly," she replied, deflecting attention from her personal role to the aircraft's capabilities. "The stealth systems and advanced flight controls made the mission possible." General Hayes nodded approvingly. "Which brings us to the next phase of this program. The Wraith's combat debut was successful, but we need to evaluate lessons learned and prepare for future operations." The mention of future operations brought a different kind of tension to the room. The mission they just completed was supposed to be unique, a one-time use of experimental technology for a specific strategic objective. The suggestion,